can tell you people they were the devil's children.
Good afternoon and greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, we are in a new room today, and hopefully it's going to work. So without further ado, I am going to allow Mickey and Aurora to come down, or at least one of them to come down. I think Aurora will come down. Doubtless Mickey will come down soon enough. And I'm going to plunge right in. Oh dear, Mickey's coming down. Okay, go girl, good girl. And the first question is not really actually a question. It's an observation that I'm using as a starting point, because we have some really rather interesting ground to cover today. Rather meaty. So if you bear with me, I'll start with Mac, who says, "I'm very disappointed the Crown will not be backing the victims of the bullying claims by making the findings public. I feel they are putting family first, and by not acknowledging the claims of these employees, they are marginalizing them, and it's very disappointing in my opinion." Mac is obviously an American because of the way marginalizing is spelled. And I don't think that Mac fully appreciates the situation. And I don't think Mac is unique, because I have received an awful lot of comments and questions along this line as to why has the palace been silent. Well, we need to remember how this whole business of the bullying inquiry started. Jason Knopf reported Meghan to Samantha Carruthers while Meghan was still a working royal for bullying a series of employees. Finally, something was done about it. And when Oprah was about to do her interview, by which time the palace had an inkling as to the fact that Harry and Meghan were going to plunge the knife in unfairly and untruthfully, somehow magically, the fact that there was this inquiry was leaked to Valentine Lowe of the Times. Very coincidental. It's not only Meghan and Harry who know how to propagandize, let me tell you. The palace is pretty adept at it as well when they have to be. And they were very quick at that time, because they were actually doing damage limitation and hopefully neutralizing some of the incendiary comments which they knew Meghan and Harry would make. They didn't need to know what the specifics were. They knew what Meghan and Harry are like, and therefore knew what they were going to be doing. You know, it doesn't matter whether you call somebody an axe murderer or somebody who kills people with stones or rocks. Murder is murder. So they knew that something untoward was happening and was coming. And Meghan, of course, immediately announced that she had never bullied anybody and that they were trying to defame her. Well, they actually weren't trying to defame her, they were speaking the truth. And they also made the cardinal error, they being the palace, of announcing that the findings would be made public. Well, of course, by then, they had no control over what Harry and Meghan had said, because it was all in the can. But I gather that they weren't 100% sure that everything was in the can. And I think this was hopefully an attempt to persuade Meghan and Harry to maybe go a little bit easier. Anyway, the whole thing was a pointless exercise because everything was in the can. And they said to neutralize the effect that the findings would be made public, knowing that the accusations were so severe that there was no doubt that Meghan would be found guilty. But before I say any more on the subject, let me read out what Pamela RG says, then I will answer the whole in one go. Because Pamela RG has two questions, one of which relates to this, and I don't want to duplicate. Hi Lady C, I hope you, Mickey and Aurora are doing well. Thank you very much. I hope we are too. It's always so informative to listen to your video episodes. Thank you. Could you enlighten us, why would a Clarence House spokesperson talk about Prince Charles having an emotional first meeting with his granddaughter Lilibet during an official press briefing on royal finances? Is this to deflect on Prince Charles's latest cash money troubles? Did the meeting truly take place? So she's asking if Prince Charles met with the children. And then number two, with regards to the Buckingham Palace keeping secret Meghan's bullying report, what is your opinion on the Daily Mail's analysis that the palace is afraid to upset the Sussexes? Why all of a sudden the palace is appeasing the Sussexes when they've kept them far and cold during the Jubilee? All these latest stories don't make sense. Thank you for always sharing with us your information and analyses. Okay, I'll take the Lilibet and Archie bit first and then continue with the bullying, because that's really the meaty thing. Yes, it was during a financial report that the palace made the statement that Prince Charles had an emotional meeting with Lilibet and had been very, 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 well, I think there were a few fewer varies, but not that many fewer, delightful meeting with Archie as well. So that tends to confirm the speculation that Archie and Lily were not here is somewhat unfounded, because the palace doesn't actually deliberately and calculatedly lie. It may dodge the truth, but it doesn't usually deliberately lie. And it doesn't set out to mislead with false information. It might at times mislead by withholding information, which is of course where the never explain, never complain mantra actually has some validity. But what the palace is doing and what Prince Charles is doing, because you can depend on it that this was done with the approval of Prince Charles. Now, you need to remember that Prince Charles and the Queen love their son and grandson. And it is a gaping wound to have the falling out that has occurred. Just as how Thomas Markle loves his daughter and also has a gaping wound where her loss is concerned. I mean, these are parents and grandparents who for 30-something years loved the people involved. You don't just turn off love, even if what you thought was an apple turns out to be an orange. Let's put it that way. Charles and the Queen would like to have a good relationship with Harry. Sadly, they also know the reality. Now, I know from my own personal experience of dealing with disordered personalities that you are torn at all times because you are moving effectively in a direction that you are compelled to move in, which you really would prefer not to move in. It's the tug, the push and pull, shall we say, of being caught up in a relationship with disordered people. Of course they want to restore relations and will do whatever they can that is both reasonable and positive, and indeed unreasonable, but remaining positive, to try to palliate the situation so that Harry and with Harry, Meghan and the children will have an ongoing working relationship with them that is basically peaceable and non-controversial. Now, the public may think, oh, just get rid of them and just axe them. But you know, when your heart is involved, it's not very easy. And I think we need to be a little bit compassionate here. That's the first thing. The second thing is, they have taken very good advice. The professionals will tell you how to deal with disordered personalities. You know, disordered personalities are nothing new in grand royal aristocratic circles, nor are substance abusers and alcohol abusers. They're all, to a lesser or greater extent, familiar with the concept of what in AA you call loving detachment. After you've tried palliation and deprivation and admiration and all the other Asians that don't work, you are stuck with the last one, which is loving detachment. This is what they are employing. I've touched upon the issue of the 12-step program insofar as it relates to Meghan and Harry and their conduct. And in this instance, the palace is adopting the concept and exercising the practice of loving detachment. Kill him with kindness. Heap praise on them where you can. Hence, how proud Charles is of the fact that they are financially independent. In other words, no money is coming out of his or the taxpayer's pocket. You know, when you're dealing with destructive, disordered, dangerous personalities who are close to you and who can do damage, whether they are lying or speaking the truth, even sometimes more so when they are lying, because if they're going to be basically truthful, you know what's coming next and you can prepare for it. When if they're liars, and Harry and Meghan don't have a very good track record in terms of veracity, you don't know what's coming next. So, what does this mean in terms of the ongoing relationship? Well, it's deflecting their rage, their anger, their victimhood, all of the negative characteristics to which the world has been treated. It has nothing to do with the Al-Thani matter, where the former Prime Minister, HBJ, as he's known for short, gave 3 lots of $1 million in cash. Middle Easterners often deal in cash. It's no big deal. And it's actually ridiculous that Rupert Murdoch's organisation can be hounding the fundraising abilities of the Prince of Wales's charity when Rupert Murdoch isn't giving a penny, but he's trying to dry up gifts. Why is he trying to dry up gifts? It's not going into Charles's pocket. It's not going into the pockets of his advisors. It's not going into the royal family's pocket. It's going into the bank account of the charity. Why is Rupert Murdoch so eager to deprive those who would benefit from the largesse in cash or by any other means of a rich foreigner? Rupert Murdoch was a rich foreigner. He never ever was giving any money anywhere that I'm aware of. But anyway, to go on back to the business of the bullying outcome, I was quoted in this article. This is how I became aware of it. The International Business Times claims that Meghan Markle is moving on. Of course, that's what her people have said. After the investigation into the bullying allegations made against her was concluded. According to Us Weekly, or US Weekly, I don't know which one it is, I'm not familiar with the publication, the Duchess of Sussex and her husband, Prince Harry, are pleased with the results of the probe into accusations made by royal staffers against the former Suits star. An unnamed source told the outlet that Markle was cleared of the bullying accusations after the investigation. It quotes Meghan's people as saying, Meghan is a fair boss and never bullied anyone who worked for her at the palace in the first place. She's happy that her name has been cleared from the defamatory claims. She and Harry are looking forward to putting the incident behind them and are happily moving on with their lives in Montecito. This was a direct response to Sir Michael Stevens, Keeper of the Privy Purse, who's basically the Queen's financial guy, to use the vernacular, confirming during an annual briefing about the royal finances at Buckingham Palace that the probe into Meghan's bullying allegations had been wrapped up and that its findings would not be publicly disclosed. That's also when Prince Charles's people took the opportunity of what is being presented by certain royal commentators as an olive branch directed to Harry and Meghan by burying the report. That's not what happened. I have been reliably informed as to what happened, and because I know my way around the law, this has the ring of truth. So it's not pointless and ignorant speculation. Meghan was found guilty in the report. She was not absolved of blame. The findings were that Meghan, I understand, was found guilty in the report. If Meghan would like to be believed, Jason Knopf, Melissa Tuoberty, Samantha Carruthers, and others were all vicious, malicious liars who were seeking to defame her. They weren't malicious liars. Nobody was seeking to defame her. She was not absolved. She was found guilty. Not only was she accused of bullying, but she was more seriously accused of conduct that is tantamount to sadism, emotional cruelty. These are not light charges. These are profoundly damaging charges in terms of the questionability of the way she functions. She was not absolved. She knew she would not be absolved because she knew the quality of the accusations against her and the quality of the people making them were so high that there would be no possibility of her being absolved. And my understanding is that there is the belief in palace circles that was her strong incentive for going on Oprah, and because she knew that there was a bullying probe, and she knew that HR was involved, and that she went on Oprah to preempt and have the preemptive strike by casting aspersions upon the HR team at Buckingham Palace with her preposterous and ludicrous claim that she went to them to seek help because she was feeling suicidal when she was pregnant. First of all, the HR team at Buckingham Palace and all of the palaces does not exist for the convenience or the welfare of the royals. It exists for the convenience, welfare and protection of their employees. So Meghan was getting in a low first blow by chatting her nonsense about how the Buckingham Palace HR team had let her down. It is after the palace decided, at the Queen's behest, I am informed, hopefully correctly, that the investigation should be conducted by an eminent firm of lawyers who would be beyond suspicion and would therefore, the findings would be not only respected, but seen to be respectable, that there could be no cover-up. Because, make no mistake about it, once that Oprah interview took place, there was a strong incentive within the palace to expose Meghan fully. They had already exposed her by leaking the fact that the bullying probe had been underway for some time and that the complaints had been made while she was a working royal. They had a strong incentive to discredit her because they knew she was going to discredit them, and they thought better they discredit her with the truth than she discredits them with lies. However, once it was handed over to independent legal investigators, let's say, they informed the palace that, sorry, the findings of the report cannot be made public. Whether the sovereign grant was involved or not, by law, the findings of this, an investigation of this nature, have to be kept confidential. Otherwise, all of the parties to the investigation would be open to pressure and abuse publicly, as well as possibly privately. I hope that pretty much makes the position clear as to why the findings have not been made public. But use your brain. There have been recommendations made, and the recommendations have already been implemented. Yes, in an ideal world, it would be wonderful if us, the public, could have, if we, the public, wrong, if we, the public, could have our curiosity satisfied with publication of the findings. But any professional will tell you, on either side of the Atlantic, that it would be extraordinary and indeed extraordinarily abusive of not only the process, but the witnesses to the investigation if the findings were made public, because then the participants would no longer enjoy the protection that confidentiality provides. I hope that clears up for once and for all the doubts where this whole business is concerned. Anne Anderson says, Lady C, I saw Lady Victoria Hervey on GB News with Eamon Holmes. I know you know each other. Ghislaine Maxwell has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. She thinks she won't survive a year. She also asserts that the Andrew photo is a fake. How connected is she? Is her information accurate? She struck me as really sensible and well-reasoned. Anne Anderson, you're right to conclude what you have concluded. Yes, I know Victoria. Her mother and I have been chums for 40 years. And although I've known her vaguely, it's as a result of this whole Andrew business and the Virginia Giuffre concoctions that I have come to realize that Victoria is a lot more than just a fantastic figure and a good-looking face. She rarely has character and mettle and good judgment. She also is extremely well connected. You know, she made a really interesting point on GB News because I looked at it, which was that, as I have said before, and she confirmed, she didn't know anything about the antics that were going on, these unsavory aspects of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's life and their way of life. And I've made that point repeatedly, that nobody that I am aware of knew about it, except, of course, the participants themselves. They would have known about it, but no one else did. And Jeffrey Epstein wasn't advertising it because he was using eminent people to make himself a lot of money and get a lot of influence. And I think that's the point that needs to be remembered. She thinks Ghislaine Maxwell won't survive for a year. She's worried that Ghislaine Maxwell will be wiped out. I am rather more optimistic. I suspect, and I could be wrong, that in 3 to 5 years, when the appeal is trundling through the courts, the American judiciary is going to discover, as it discovered in the Bill Cosby matter, that a judicial agreement made by the judiciary with or the prosecuting authorities with potential criminals or actual criminals, certainly potential defendants, has the validity of law and must be respected. My own take on this is that Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be punished in the most dreadful way, and then they are going to discover, as they discovered with Bill Cosby, that they had no right to try her in the first place and she needs to be released. I hope I'm right, and I hope Victoria is wrong. Sadly, Victoria could be right and I could be wrong. Victoria knows an awful lot about the Virginia Giuffre Prince Andrew matter. And she asserts, and she did it publicly on GB News, and she's done it privately elsewhere, including to me, that the picture that has been used to nail Prince Andrew is a total fake. She has chapter and verse on it. It's not for me to steal her thunder, so I'm not going to say more than that. But she's not flaky. She's not stupid. She also is in touch with Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is one of the leading legal minds of the late 20th and 21st century. And Virginia Giuffre has fallen foul of him by accusing him, as she did Prince Andrew, and let's not forget Bill Clinton. My own feeling is that Ghislaine Maxwell is being the stooge and the whipping post for Jeffrey Epstein. She's a woman. Now, I'm not a great one in terms of beating the poor me, I'm a woman drum, because I think men can also beat the poor them, their men's drums as well. But I think it's mighty peculiar that the only person who has been charged with anything so far is Ghislaine Maxwell, a woman. Why hasn't Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, why haven't they been held to account for their tremendously close relationship with Epstein? Why is it two Brits? Prince Andrew, who's not been charged with anything, but his life has been destroyed, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Yet there are all of these powerful Americans who were far closer than Prince Andrew and had a far more long-standingly intimate relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, because Ghislaine Maxwell's relationship with him effectively ended in the early 2000s. So I just say that for what it's worth. And I'm not excusing any wrongdoing she did, but I do believe in the rule of law, and I believe that not even the American state and the American judicial system and the American legal system is above its own laws, which sadly it often appears to be. Is her information accurate? Yes, it is. Watch her space. There's a lot more to come. Alexandra Blackcat says, wonder how the very religious Queen feels about her Royal Duchess great-granddaughter-in-law speaking out on the rights of women in America to abortion and dragging feminist Prince Harry into the fray by saying his reaction to the news was guttural. Isn't it time they gave up their courtesy titles? That's a very interesting question. May I make the point, Alexandra Blackcat, that Meghan is her granddaughter-in-law, not her great-granddaughter-in-law, for what that's worth. I hate to be pedantic, but in the interests of accuracy, Meghan has waded in, as often happens. Fools rush in where wise men fear to tread. And Meghan is an American with political ambitions, which when I wrote about them, some members of the gutter press and the royal correspondents mocked me for making the assertion, which they're now all making themselves. The whole thing is distasteful, but I'm going to read out something below because that really says it all. But before saying that, I'm going to say one little thing first, which is that Meghan clearly doesn't know the meaning of the word guttural. You know, German is a guttural language. Harry might have had a visceral response, but he can't have had a guttural response. Unless, of course, she's now saying that he's Neanderthal man and it's and that's how he speaks. So, which maybe she is saying. And again, I will make the point which I've made before, that Roe versus Wade is not depriving, by its repeal, of states of their rights. It is handing back to the states a right that was taken away from them by what has now been decided, possibly unpopularly, but nevertheless with constitutional and legal merit, as having been the misapplication of the Constitution. Indeed, there is a strong argument to be run to the effect that by repealing Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court has beefed up the powers of the states and eroded the powers of the Supreme Court. Because what the ruling means is that the Supreme Court didn't have the right to create a law where the Constitution was silent on the subject. And therefore, this is not actually an erosion of the rights of citizens. It is the ratification of an overreach constitutionally by the Supreme Court in 1973. Yes, it was a very popular ruling. I get that. And I'm not going to say one way or the other that I think that women who wish to have abortions in the early days of pregnancy should be deprived of the choice of having them. I'm not getting into that debate at all. What I am stating very clearly is that the Supreme Court has confirmed that it overreached itself and it has bounced the ball right back into the states' courts. And the people of the United States, who are citizens and who are residents and who can vote in each of those states, their rights have been reconfirmed. A right that they possessed that was taken away from them with Roe versus Wade has been restored to them. Now, the subject of abortion is a very hot topic, and most practicing Christians have reservations about abortion as a woman's right across the board with no strings attached. In England, we have abortion laws that are very clear, and there are certain conditions which need to be fulfilled, and then women have the right to have an abortion. I actually, and I hope I'm not going to be pilloried for this, think that if that is something that women wish to do, I think that is a choice they should make. Whether I personally would agree, and if I were in the position would do it or not, is beside the point. Just because you don't want to do something doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it, and vice versa. I don't want to put words in the Queen's mouth, and I don't want, for the sake of answering a question, to disrespect her, but she is a devout Anglican. And I would respectfully submit that nobody who has any spiritual merit whatsoever would be anything but horrified if a member of their family hopped into a debate, jumped on a bandwagon opportunistically to enhance their earning power, their hoped-for prestige, especially with something as controversial as abortion. But, you know, you're dealing with somebody that will sell anything down the river if it's going to be to her advantage. And now Bitter Beauty rather wittily says, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, I set my watch and sat back. Bitter Beauty, incidentally, is a woman of colour. Sure enough, a few days later, up popped Meghan, surprise, surprise, howling about injustice and banging the feminist drum. She and Harry are ready to lead the charge on Washington. God help us all and save us from those two. If bandwagon jumping were an Olympic sport, they'd take gold. Bitter Beauty. Thank you so much for your comment. I couldn't agree more. And Maureen Griffin says, on a totally different subject, but again, touching upon the wild inconsistency of this rather troubled and troubling couple. I find it utterly crazy that for all Harry's obsession with Diana, he was driving without a seat belt. Well spotted, Maureen Griffin. Yet another case of, I'm above the law. I'm above the rules of nature. I'm above the rules of physics. I'm above everything. And you have got to do what I say. But God forbid that I should do what I say. Because, you see, I'm far too grand for the rules to apply to me. And of course, as everybody knows, had Diana been wearing a seatbelt, she would have survived. Antonia De Silva says, Lady C, what do you make of Sir Lewis Hamilton calling for older voices to be silenced as a result of Bernie Ecclestone hopping to Nelson Piquet's defense as well as Putin's? Very good question. Thank you, Antonia De Silva. I take it you must be Brazilian, because Nelson Piquet, I think, yeah. Well, I'm going to break this down simply. First of all, Lewis Hamilton has one unmitigated goal, saying that older people should be silenced. I mean, which bit of age is honour and experience teacheth wisdom? Doesn't he understand? Oh, I get it's all the bits. So, just because someone is old, they're not supposed to make a comment. They're supposed to be silenced. They're supposed to be muzzled. What about the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of age? Oh, I see. We should do without that because some jumped up little sportsman has decided that in his arrogance and egotism that people who might actually be able to make a contribution to a debate should be muzzled because he doesn't want their contribution and he doesn't want to be heard. Well, okay, he doesn't want them to be heard, sorry. I get that Lewis Hamilton is upset because Nelson Piquet called him something that in translation is objectionable. But Nelson Piquet has denied having said that the word he used has the translated meaning. If Lewis Hamilton really were sensible, and he clearly can't be, otherwise he wouldn't be demanding that anybody who's older should be muzzled so that all young people can bay like wolves and bray like donkeys. But he would accept Nelson Piquet's explanation and apology. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, he wouldn't be wading in on Bernie Ecclestone as well, who, of course, gave them a double whammy because not only has he defended Nelson Piquet, but he also made some positive comments about Vladimir Putin. Now, Vladimir Putin is somebody that Bernie Ecclestone has been in business with for years. And Bernie Ecclestone is the person who turned Formula 1 from the sport for a few elites into the worldwide phenomenon that it now is. Lewis Hamilton may have an ability as a driver, but without the engine of Bernie Ecclestone, he would have been just yet another, actually he wouldn't have existed as a driver, because before Bernie Ecclestone turned it into a sport for drivers and for people across the board, it was an elitist sport and only the elite could take part in it. And Lewis Hamilton may be elite in terms of his driving ability, but he was not elite in terms of his socio-economic background, to the best of my knowledge. So he would not have been able to have achieved what he has achieved without Bernie Ecclestone having created the platform upon which he has not only flourished but shone brilliantly. He needs to consider that before he shoots off his mouth. He also needs to not be blamed for Bernie Ecclestone's comments in terms of Vladimir Putin, which the press have total responsibility for denigrating, distorting, misunderstanding, and perverting the true meaning of, because he was far more nuanced than he is being given credit for. You know, when people condemn the words of other people and they zero in on part of the words and ignore the counterbalancing part of the words, that is called a distortion of fact. And when the press does it, that is a mischievous misinformation and deliberately lying to the public. I make those points for what they're worth. August May says, Lady C, in the Richard Eden column in the Mail, royally connected interior designer Nikki Haslam is quoted stating that the Queen gave Harry and Meghan permission to name their daughter after her, thinking they'd name her Elizabeth. Is that true? Also, do you know Mr. Haslam? If you do, what's he like? The Mail kept on referring to him as Ms. Haslam. What do you make of that? Big, bold words. Oh, what do I make of that? Well, of course, everybody knows that Nikki's gay. Yes, I know Nikki. I've known Nikki for years. I like Nikki up to a point, and he's very charming, and he's certainly very well connected, but we have history, because many years ago Nikki wrote a column for Ritz magazine, which used to be owned by Baron Stephen Bentinck, whose ex-wife Lisa Hogan is now with Jeremy Clarkson. And Stephen Bentinck's sister Henrietta was Spenny Northampton's first wife. I think Spenny's had 6 wives. He also had a wonderful property in Jamaica. Very nice man, very interesting, very esoteric. So he said something about me which was completely untrue, and my lawyers immediately got in touch and made sure that an apology was issued. But he is so attached to that witticism that he even included it in his autobiography, despite not being able to use my name. Well, I think he's slightly embarrassed, in all honesty. But that's him and me personally. But we get along perfectly well. But are we ever going to be great friends? No. But that doesn't alter the fact that he is very well connected. And he's only saying what I've already said. But yes, it's accurate information. The Queen thought that they were going to name the baby Elizabeth, not Lilibet. You could say this was yet another misunderstanding, or if you wanted to be suspicious, you could say a sleight of hand or a deliberate withholding of pertinent information, so that somebody would be tricked into giving you a confidence that you didn't deserve. And in this instance, not only was the Queen tricked into having a confidence that she was clearly not able to possess in terms of reality, but also that they had, by omitting the most pertinent information of all, they had, in fact, misled her. You know, Meghan went to a Catholic school. The sins of omission are taught to everybody in Catholic school. Not there are sins of commission and there are sins of omission. And if you deliberately withhold pertinent information, that is a sin of omission. You might then be able to justify it and say, oh, well, they misunderstood, or I didn't really understand, or it's a genuine mistake. Mickey, catch that flying pig. Danny Adcock says, gosh, Lady C or Lady D, stunning outfit and jewellery. I'm getting a lot of Spencer vibes from this one. Danny Adcock is referring to my choker in the previous video with the blue and white top. Well, let me put it this way. Diana did what I did and everybody else did. In our world, everybody wore chokers. So you're getting a Spencer vibe. Believe me, I wasn't emulating her. I was simply doing what I've always done. She simply did it as well. As for my question, can you please let us know your thoughts on Mega Liar's interview in Vogue and predictable statements on Roe versus Wade? Another move into politics? Has Harry also not learned that Americans do not want his opinions on their politics? Harry and Meghan can't learn. That's what, when you have certain types of personalities. Harry used to be able to learn. Harry was actually a very good learner. Not academically, but he was certainly sharper than two pins in picking up things on a day-to-day basis that suited him and that played well and made him popular and into hail fellow, well-met, fabulous, nice guy that everybody loves. Hence why he was the second most popular member of the royal family. He's since then picked up new lessons. He's learned from somebody who doesn't learn, who can't learn, who used to learn. She certainly learned how to maneuver her way up to where she is now, but once she reached there, she had an explosion of self-importance. And she has unlearned every lesson she learned before, and she's not learned any new ones. Is it a move into politics? Of course it's a move into politics. She's hoping to become President of the United States of America one of these days. Oh, Mickey, please, Mickey, catch that other flying pig. I want to book a first-class cabin on that flying pig. One thing is as likely to happen as another. Now, two very quick comments. Becky says, the order is ruined with Blair. Becky, the order of the Garter is not ruined by Tony Blair. Prime ministers of this country are systematically awarded honours upon their departure. Tony Blair has committed no crimes for which he has been charged. until such time as he has been charged with those crimes and found guilty, and I say this as someone who believes he is a war criminal, until such time as he and Bush find their backsides on benches in The Hague and they are found guilty. And it can't happen with George W. Bush because America is not a signatory, just for what it's worth. Britain is a signatory. America isn't, to the best of my knowledge. So American presidents can pretty much do whatever they want, and they are not going to be subject to justice. Well, as long as Blair is America's poodle and America remains as powerful as it is, Blair is not going to be charged with anything. I think the likelihood is he will die without being charged with anything. Having said that, he has tainted his legacy and destroyed his reputation. But that does not mean that because he has been found guilty in the court of popular opinion, that he has been found guilty in the court of law. And until such time as he is, the court of popular opinion does not have the right to act as if it is a court of law. We need to remember our place in the scheme of things. We are not the law. We may dislike certain things. We are lucky to live in a society that allows us to have a voice. Not all societies do. Treasure what we have. Use it wisely. Make your voice heard. But don't expect to be endowed with the rights of the judicature. You're not the judiciary. I hope that explains it. And I hope I get my sentiments across, because the fact of the matter is that the Queen has held up Tony Blair's honours for so many years that it became a problem, because until Tony Blair's expected honours began to be released, no other successive Prime Minister could receive the honours to which he is entitled upon stepping down as Prime Minister. You know, whether we like the Prime Minister or not doesn't alter the fact it's an important job, and it's a job with difficulty. And it is a job that deserves rewards. It's as simple as that. Eminent positions require eminent rewards. That's the greater justice. The lesser justice is that Tony Blair has been found guilty in the court of public opinion, and his legacy has been tainted and his reputation damaged. If that's all that's going to happen to him, I would submit that reputation and legacy are sufficiently important that they should be troubling to anybody who loses them. So he's not without punishment. It's simply that we can't punish him the way we would if we were the law, but we're not. And last but not least is Kate CT says, on the Rwanda topic, I'm currently visiting Rwanda, and I have to say that it is the most lovely, warm and wonderful country. I'm so impressed by it. I prefer it to the UK. Kate CT, are you going to move there? Hopefully you can then say that you're a refugee and you'll get free accommodation. does have to make jokes of serious matters. Then she says, also, Lady C, that necklace is gorgeous. I take it you mean my choker. Thank you very much. It is very attractive, isn't it? Yes. It came in for an awfully great number of wonderful comments. So thank you very much. And on that note, I'll say thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. And remember, please keep the questions and comments coming in. This cannot be done without you. I know I keep on saying it, but it's the absolute truth. And I have to say it. And on that note, I'll say God bless and goodbye.